Have you ever heard someone call your name in a dream, even though you've never met them before? Would you dare to dig up a scorched grave, one where no one knows the name of the person buried beneath, and no one has dared to speak their name for decades? If you ever thought only the living needed to be called by name, then watch this story to the end, because calling the dead by their true name, just once, can change the fate of the living. That afternoon, the sun was blazing. I, Tuấn, had just finished digging up 2 old graves in the cemetery on the west side of the village. The ground was radiating heat, my back drenched in sweat. But I wasn't done yet. There was one last grave. The landowner insisted it had to be done that day, because the excavators were coming in the next morning to level the ground. I wiped my forehead and glanced at the small grave nestled tightly against a thick bamboo grove. With a faded headstone, a traditional grave, manually built, surrounded by laterite stones, the client told me, "This grave is old, probably several decades. No one's ever claimed to be a relative. Just dig carefully. If all that's left is ash, you can scatter it." I felt uneasy, talking about someone's grave like it was garbage. But I had accepted the job, so I got to work. Tam, my helper, and I started digging, removing layer after layer of stones. Everything was normal, until my hoe struck the lid of the coffin. A burnt smell rose up. Not the scent of rot, but a faint, smoldering smell of charred wood mixed with burnt human hair. A smell you never forget once you've smelled it. I froze. "Hey Tam, do you smell something?" He covered his nose and frowned. "Why does it smell like something's burning underground?" I knelt down and brushed the ash off the lid. As I wiped, a chill ran down my spine. The wooden planks on the coffin lid were scorched black, as if they had been licked by flames but not completely consumed. The wood was still there, but when I touched it, it crumbled like ash. I gently pushed the lid open, and the sight inside sent shivers down my spine. No bones, no full remains, just some ashes and strands of burnt hair, something you would never find in a proper burial. I asked in a shaky voice, "You ever seen anything like this before?" Tam shook his head, his face pale. "No, never. Every grave we've dug had bones." "What is this, Tuấn?" I stayed silent. Sweat ran down my back, even though the breeze had picked up. Beneath the ashes, I discovered a small brass item, like a medallion or an old charm, blackened by fire. I had never seen anything so strange underground. As I tried to pick it up, a strong gust of wind blew ashes into my face, making me cough violently. In that instant, I heard a woman screaming faintly, as if from beneath the earth. "Don't burn me, I'm not dead." Terrified, I turned to Tam. He was sitting on the ground, trembling. Did you hear that?" "I swear I heard someone crying." "Really?" I swallowed hard and looked back at the grave. No one, just the 2 of us. But that burnt smell remained, heavy and pungent, like someone had just scorched hair right beside us. I decided to collect the ashes and place them into a clean cloth bag. That strange metal piece, I put in my chest pocket, planning to clean it later and ask a feng shui master I knew. As we left the cemetery, the sun was still blazing, but I noticed my shadow stretched unusually long, even though the sun was directly overhead. That night, I returned to my old one-story house where I lived with my blind mother. She had been blind for over 10 years, living with a sixth sense. I placed the ash bag on the side altar, planning to rebury it the next morning. The metal object, I rinsed it in salt water and laid it to dry on the table. Around midnight, just as I had dozed off, knock knock. I jolted awake, checked the clock. 1:47 a.m. "Who's there?" No reply. I opened the door, no one. But on the ground, clear, wet footprints, as if someone had just stood there and vanished. I stepped back inside and locked the door tightly. But an hour later, more knocking. Knock, knock, knock. This time, I didn't open it. I crouched beside the door, clutching a box cutter. Only after a few minutes of silence did I return to my bed. As I passed by the side altar, I saw the cloth bag leaking. Black liquid, with a foul smell, like the water used to cleanse a corpse. The next morning, my mother asked, "Did you burn something last night?" I smelled burnt hair, strong and awful. I froze. My throat went dry. I asked, "What time did you smell it?" She said, "Around 2. And then I heard a girl crying near the altar. I thought you left the TV on." I knew then, I had brought something home that I shouldn't have. And it got worse. The burn marks started spreading on the table. A little more each morning. By the third evening, black smudges appeared on the wall near the side altar, like someone had been standing there. Smoldering. I had never believed in ghosts. But now, I didn't dare sleep in the house anymore. I took the metal piece to an old spiritual master in the village. As soon as he saw it, he shook his head repeatedly. "You need to return this to where you found it. This is an object of resentment. It was burned not to destroy it, but to seal it. Now that you've taken it, the seal is broken." I asked softly, "What if I don't return it?" He looked at me, then said a sentence I'll never forget. "Then, that spirit will stay with you until she hears her real name." Since the day I brought that piece of metal home, I haven't had a single peaceful night. My sleep has been restless. And the same dream keeps playing over and over. A thatched hut deep in the forest. It's pitch dark, with only the flickering flame of a torch. In that dim light, I see a young girl tied tightly to a wooden stake. People are standing around, shouting. The fire begins to burn. The girl screams, "Don't burn me. I'm not dead. I'm not a demon." I jolted awake, cold sweat soaking through my shirt. The clock read exactly 3 in the morning. Outside, it was pitch black, but what sent chills down my spine was the faint smell of burning hair still lingering in the air. The exact same scent I had smelled when digging that grave. I got up and went to the small altar room. The cloth bag of ashes was still there, but the metal piece was gone. Panicked, I looked all over the house but couldn't find it. Finally, when I turned back toward the altar, I saw it, lying on the floor tiles, right where the scorch mark had appeared the day before, still slightly warm. As if someone had just picked it up and set it down again. The next morning, I told everything to old Mr. Bay, the elderly man who used to watch over the cemetery years ago. As soon as he heard me describe the scorched grave, he went silent for a long time, then said, "You dug up the wrong one. That grave was a forbidden grave. No one ever claimed it. They buried her deep, and no one dared to speak her name." I asked quietly, "Why was it forbidden?" Mr. Bay slowly told the story, his voice heavy with memory. Over 30 years ago, there was a big forest fire. Villagers whispered about a girl who lived alone, wandered around, and lit lanterns at night to call spirits. They said she practiced dark magic, reviving the dead and cursing the whole village. That day, a child went missing. They blamed her entirely. No trial, no investigation. Just tied her to a stake in the clearing and burned her alive. That night, it rained, but the fire still burned. Her body was burned beyond recognition. No one held a funeral. Someone quietly buried her. Years later, anyone who went near that area smelled burning hair, heard someone crying, but found no one, so they covered the area. Put up a fake gravestone, no name, no altar. Eventually, everyone forgot, until now. Hearing that made my skin crawl. No wonder there were no bones when I dug it up. Only ash, burnt hair, and that medallion. I asked him, what was her name? He shook his head. No one dares say it. They say if you speak her name, she'll follow you. I went home, my mind spinning. That night, I dreamed again, the same hut, but this time, the girl turned to face me. Half her face was burned and charred. The other half still intact, with red eyes and trembling lips. She looked at me and said each word clearly. "Say, my name?" I woke up with the distinct feeling someone had whispered right into my ear. Outside, the wind was still. But the altar light suddenly flickered and went out. I rushed to switch on the main light, heart pounding. When the room lit up, I saw it. Right there on the floor where it always showed up, a half-burnt lock of hair. Draped across the metal piece I thought I had already hidden away. At this point, I had no more doubts. That girl, that spirit, was trying to speak to me. But if I didn't know her name, couldn't call her by name, this wouldn't stop. The next day, I went from house to house in the village, seeking the elders. Everyone avoided the topic, shook their heads, or pretended not to know. Only one old woman who lived alone at the edge of the forest agreed to speak. She stared straight at me and said, "If you truly want to know her name, then tonight, go to the ancient banyan tree, where they burned her at the stake. Burn 3 sticks of incense. Bury a lock of hair at its roots. She'll come, but remember, don't turn away. If you turn away, she'll be angry. And if she's angry, no one can save you." That night, I followed her instructions to the letter. At 11:45 p.m., I arrived at the banyan tree. The wind howled, no moon in the sky. I lit the incense, dug a small hole, and buried the lock of hair. I didn't even dare breathe too loudly. And right at the stroke of midnight, I heard footsteps behind me. Slow, dragging steps. I didn't dare turn my head. The footsteps stopped. The silence was terrifying. Then, a woman's voice, soft and raspy like fire crackling, spoke right behind me. "My name is Lean." I tried my best not to tremble, held my breath, but right at that moment, a freezing hand touched my shoulder, forcing me to turn around on reflex. There was no one there, only wind, but on my shirt was a clear, scorched handprint, blackened with smoke. And from that night on, that name, Lean, began to haunt my dreams. The incense smoke, and every step I took inside my own home. Since the night I heard her name, my life has never been the same. My dreams were no longer vague or blurry. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the same scene, clear as day. A thatched hut in the middle of the forest. The sound of fire crackling. And the girl named Lean standing just a few steps away from me. Her face was no longer half burnt and half intact, it was whole now. Pale as paper, with red, tear-filled eyes that looked both sad and furious. She didn't speak, she just stared, but that look made my heart skip a beat every time I woke up. My mother, ever since I brought the medallion and the bag of ashes home, started behaving strangely. She was still blind, but it was as if she could see things others couldn't. In the mornings, she would sit upright in the middle of the house, eyes closed, hands trembling in front of her, murmuring, "This girl, so young, why did she have to die in such pain?" I asked, "Who are you talking about, Mom?" She didn't answer. Instead, she reached out and placed her hand on my chest, right where I had tucked that piece of metal the first day. Her fingers trembled, and she whispered, "I hear her crying inside your heart." I stood frozen. My heart was pounding, not out of fear, but because I could feel it too. That night, my mother sat on the porch. There was no wind, yet the rooftop creaked as if someone were walking on it. I quietly stepped behind her, planning to ask her to come inside and rest. But when I got close, I froze. She was talking, but not to me. To someone invisible. Her voice was gentle, like soothing a child. "I know, sweetheart, your death was unjust, but please, let him go. Tuấn didn't burn you, it was others who did wrong. Not him." I stepped back, my heart tightening. My mother slowly turned her head, not looking at me, but at the space behind me. Her eyes were blind, but that gaze felt like it pierced right through me. Then she smiled gently. "She's standing behind you, Tuấn. She hasn't left your side since the day you brought her back." I spun around in panic. Of course, no one was there, but in that exact moment, I clearly heard a girl sighing behind my neck, soft, but so cold it sent chills down my spine. I didn't dare sleep. I burned incense throughout the house, kept the lights on all night, but it didn't help. The smell of burning hair still crept through every corner. Objects in the house, like someone had touched them, shifted slightly every day. The curtain in the living room had a black scorch mark shaped like a small hand. I knew she was here, in my house, walking beside me with every step. I decided to call Master 2, the one who had helped me with other strange cases before. The moment he stepped into my house, he frowned. "That smell, it's a fire spirit. Who burned someone's grave?" I told him everything, from digging the grave, finding the medallion, bringing it home, dreaming of the girl, and learning her name, Lean. He was silent for a long time. Then he sighed deeply and said slowly, "You're being followed, not to scare you, but to reclaim what was taken. That girl died without a body, without a proper resting place. Now you've dug her up and disturbed her temporary grave. Her spirit has returned, to reclaim her identity." I asked, "Then what should I do?" He answered, "You must restore her grave. Build a mound, erect a headstone, but don't get her name wrong. You know her name now, don't you?" I nodded. He continued, "You'll need the ashes and her hair. Burn incense at the banyan tree on the full moon night. And apologize, with sincerity." I asked again, "What if I make a mistake? What if she won't forgive me?" He looked at me, his eyes stern. "Then from now on, you'll live with someone only you can see. Someone walking behind you to work, sleeping next to you at night, eating, speaking, watching, always with the shadow of a girl with burnt hair. Can you live with that?" I couldn't answer. I quietly returned home, with one question echoing in my mind. Can someone who died unjustly ever forgive? Or do they only let go when they're finally acknowledged as human, not as monsters? I couldn't wait any longer. The very next morning, I packed up and returned to the cemetery. The grave I had dug up was now just a shallow hole. The earth had hardened under the sun, ashes mixed with black soil. I brought with me the cloth bag of ashes, the remaining burnt hair, and that small medallion. My heart felt heavy like carrying a boulder. In my head, Master 2's words kept repeating, "She's not following you to scare you, but to reclaim what was lost." I began to dig again, but this time, not to disturb, but to rebuild. I buried the ashes and hair in the exact same spot, then formed a small, round mound of earth, simple, but clean. I didn't carve a stone marker. Instead, I took an old brick and wrote the name, Lean, in red ink with a brush. The letters trembled, as if my hand was no longer mine. When it was done, I knelt before the grave and lit 3 sticks of incense. "Lean, I don't know who you were. I was just doing a job I was hired to do. If I've wronged you, then today I ask for forgiveness. Please, don't follow my mother anymore. Please let me live, and if you need, I'll burn incense for you every month." There was no wind, yet the incense smoke quivered, as if someone was breathing beside me. I remained still, kneeling. It felt like someone had just sat down behind me, right against my back. And then, a small flame burst up from the base of the incense sticks, flaring bright in the middle of the day. Under a blazing sun, with no wind and no oil. I flinched, but didn't run. I shut my eyes. Because Master 2 had warned, "Don't turn away. If you do, she'll be angry." I heard bare feet rustling around the grave. Then they stopped, right behind me. A hand touched my shoulder. Cold, gentle, no force, no pull, just rested there lightly, like a thank you, or a goodbye. I sat still, until that hand lifted off my shoulder. The footsteps receded and dissolved into the air. I opened my eyes. The incense was burned down. The brick I had written her name on still lay there. But the red ink had darkened, like dried blood. I returned home with a strange calm. There was no more smell of burnt hair. No shadowy figures at the door. My mother was sleeping peacefully. No more sleep talking. I looked around the house, wondering, was she gone? That night, I still dreamed. But this time, the thatched hut was no more. Lean was no longer standing in fire. Instead, I saw her in a white dress. Long hair flowing down, standing by a river. She smiled, then turned and walked away. Never looked back. I woke up, feeling light. But right then, as I looked in the mirror while washing my face, I noticed something. A single strand of white hair. Clear as day. Right on top of my head. I had never had gray hair before. But now it was there, as if a mark. I wasn't afraid. I simply brushed it with my hand, as if holding on to a memory of someone who died unjustly. Someone whose name no one dared to say aloud. Someone who only wanted a peaceful place to rest beneath the ground. And I knew this wasn't over, because tomorrow, I'd been called to rebury another grave. And they say, no one's dared to approach that grave for 30 years. Because every time someone touches it, the hair inside grows an inch longer each year. I never thought I'd take another case after what happened with Lean. But the living still need places to stay. And graveyards keep getting rezoned, dug up, torn apart day after day. I was called for another reburial. Not far, less than 100 meters from Lean's grave. The one who called was a landowner planning to build rental rooms. He said there was an unclaimed grave in the old garden, small, unmarked, no headstone, but everyone avoided it. No one dared go near. He told me, every year on the full moon of the 7th lunar month, the grass around that grave would wither, and human hair would rise from the earth, longer each time. Just hearing it gave me chills. I hesitated, but still agreed, partly because I didn't want anyone else to go through what I had. And partly because I thought, if I had once helped one soul find peace, maybe this is something I meant to keep doing. That morning, I arrived at the place. The sky was gray, though no rain had fallen. The grave sat beneath an old persimmon tree, its roots winding tightly around it, as if trying to hold on. I picked up my hoe. The moment I touched the ground, a long lock of hair emerged. Jet black, soft as if it belonged to someone still alive. I froze, unable to continue. The landowner, his face pale, said, voice trembling, I told you, every year it grows back. But no one dares to pull it out. No one dares to touch it. I sat down and offered a prayer. I didn't know who lay beneath, whether man or woman, old or young, but I knew one thing for sure. That person had no name spoken, no family to claim them, no one to mourn, and not even a proper stick of incense burned for them. I gently broke the surface of the soil. Each stroke of the hoe brought up a pungent smell from deep underground. Not the smell of rot, but of ash, and a faint, smoky scent like something had been burning slowly under the earth. About 30 minutes later, I uncovered part of the wooden coffin lid. It had mostly rotted away, but on its surface was the faint imprint of a small hand, as if someone had once pounded it over and over. Buried alive, my throat tightened. I called Master 2. He arrived shortly after. And even from the gate, his face turned grave. As soon as he stepped into the yard, he said, it's still her, still the fire spirit. Are you sure you've been forgiven? I nodded. He looked at me closely. Maybe she never left. Maybe she's testing you. If you truly want to help souls like hers, you have to do one more thing. You have to say the dead person's name. I froze. But how would I even know their name? He stayed silent, then pointed at a patch of grass nearby. Beneath it was a small stone, faintly carved with the words, Nameless One, died on the day of the village fire. My heart clenched. The fire. Lean had died in a fire too. It wasn't just one person. There were two. Maybe this was the second. That night, I couldn't sleep. I took the medallion out to examine it again. On the back, barely visible, was a line I'd never noticed before. I held it under the light, and the words appeared. Truck, don't leave me. A chill ran down my spine. Lean hadn't died alone. She had a younger sister. And maybe this grave belonged to Truck, the one who died alongside her. But whom no one remembered. No one called. I returned to the grave at midnight. My flashlight trembled in my hand. I lit 3 sticks of incense, stood before the grave, took a deep breath, and gently called out, "Truck, if you're still here. Your sister Lean remembers you. Tonight, someone is lighting incense on her behalf." The wind picked up, strong. My flashlight went out, but it wasn't a normal wind. It was warm, like the breath of someone who had just awakened. I didn't run. I stood still, eyes closed, listening. Footsteps circled the grave. Then, a small, trembling voice whispered beside my ear, "I can come back now, sister?" I opened my eyes, but saw nothing except a thin veil of mist. I simply said, "Lean asked me to tell you. Go to her. Both of you finally have a place to rest now." The mist slowly faded. The air grew noticeably lighter. It felt like someone had just left this world in peace. The next morning, my mother looked at me and asked quietly, "It's done, isn't it?" I nodded. She smiled gently. "The house feels brighter now. Lighter. No one standing at the window anymore each night." I stepped out onto the porch, took a deep breath, and for the first time in weeks, I saw sunlight. Real sunlight, not scorched, not ominous, just soft light, like a quiet farewell. I went back inside, opened the drawer, and took out the medallion once more. I flipped it over. The words, "Truck, don't leave me," had nearly faded, as if the one who left them had finally been set free. I knew it was over. But from that day on, I began to write everything down. Not to tell the story, but so that, one day, if someone like me ever digs up a grave and accidentally awakens a restless soul, they'll know this. Call the dead by their name. Because sometimes, just a name is enough for a soul to find their way home. I thought everything had truly come to an end. But that evening, while tidying up the small altar, where Lean's ashes once rested, I unexpectedly noticed something fall to the tiled floor. It was a small, old piece of paper, yellowed with age, as if it had been pressed under a bowl of water all this time without me ever noticing. On it, in faded purple ink, was a single line, still just legible. "If someone remembers my name, please give me a light to follow." I froze, holding the paper with trembling hands. The handwriting was unmistakably feminine, gentle, rounded. I placed it back inside a small cloth pouch, along with the medallion, as a way of preserving it. Perhaps it was the last message left by Truck, or maybe it was a fragment of Lean's lingering soul. These are things the living, like me, may never fully understand, but still must respect. That night, I dreamed again. This time, there was no fire, no smoke, no shadowy figures. I saw two young women, Lean and Truck, sitting together under the old persimmon tree, holding a bundle of incense glowing brightly. They didn't speak, just smiled at each other. Then a breeze swept through, casting a warm golden light over the once desolate land. As I approached, they turned toward me, nodded gently, and walked away toward a misty slope. No turning back, no lingering. I woke with my eyes still wet, and deep in my heart, I knew that was their final visit. Since that day, I've continued working as a grave mover. But from then on, no matter what grave I approach, old or new, claimed or unclaimed, I always bow deeply and whisper softly, "Forgive me if I've disturbed your resting place. I'm only here to help the living and the dead find a home. And if there's someone still waiting to be called by name, please speak to me in a dream. I'll listen." And strangely, in the months that followed, I began having odd dreams. Fragmented, hazy, but always someone crying, and then someone smiling, when I whispered the name they hadn't heard since the day they died. The living may only need a name for paperwork, but the dead, sometimes, they just need someone to remember they once existed. After those experiences, I no longer saw grave digging as a job that feeds on the dead. Like people used to say, I felt more like a messenger, carrying words from this world to the next. And back again. Each grave is a story. Some joyful, some sorrowful, some left in peace, some never even had their names spoken during a single incense offering. I used to think calling the name of the dead was superstition. But it's not. It's the way we acknowledge that someone once lived, that they were once part of this world. When no one remembers your name, when no one ever speaks of you again, that's when you truly die. A few months after the stories of Lean and Truck, I began receiving more calls. Not to dig, but to release a name, as people called it. One elderly man, near the end of his life, asked me to visit. He sat me down and told me about a little sister who died at age 6 from a high fever. He said, "All my life, I've never dared speak her name, because my mother said her name was bad luck." I listened quietly, then gently told him, just one sentence. If you still love her, you should say her name, just once. Not for yourself, but so she can come home. He cried, then prayed, and for the first time in 60 years, he spoke her name. Little Hong. After the ritual, he told me he finally slept peacefully. The children's shadows that once ran around his room at night were gone. I'm no priest. I don't chant or ring bells. I just listen. And now, whenever I walk through a graveyard, I no longer feel fear. It feels more like walking through an old neighborhood, where each grave is a little home, with someone waiting to be greeted, asked about, called by name. Hey there, how are you doing today? And strangely enough, the wind rustles, leaves fall, incense pops faintly in the burner, as if someone's smiling in the breeze, gently replying, I'm at peace now, thank you. Some people, in life, were never remembered. In death, no one burns incense for them. No one speaks their name. But sometimes, all it takes is one person, even a stranger, to bow their head and whisper softly. If anyone still has something to say, please, say it, and that's enough for a soul to rest in peace. I don't know how many people I've helped, but I know this. Every time I say the name of someone who passed, I'm telling them, you existed, and you are not forgotten. If you've stayed with me through this entire story, thank you for listening to something sad, but real. If you've ever experienced something similar, dreamed of someone who passed, or heard someone call your name in the night, please leave a comment below. Right finger type 1 if you believe in karma. Right finger type 0 if you think it was just coincidence. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Some about people, some about spirits, but all from the heart. No fiction, no embellishment. See you in the next video. Kong Ku.